Is that? With everyone's patience, we'll start that line again. Welcome to the closing session for the 18th annual Together We Can virtual conference. The conference has been blessed by all of you joining us to learn collectively for children and families. We've had the contributions of 86 speakers this year in 65 presentations. Wow, it's amazing. Collection of knowledge and experience, and we've been immersed in it for the past 3 days. We might not be in one place, but together we can do everything. Together, this group has made sure that we were able to network, communicate through many shared boards. We had fun with the mini competitions, and we'll go back to our work wherever that desk might be with new and cutting edge tools to help children and families. We have one more update for everyone, and then we're going to hear from a fabulous speaker who will wrap up the conference for us with an incredibly important message. For those of you who have been in the number of people who've been posting over 7,000 messages and the multitude of photos, we want to share that, where is it? There it is. We have a queen of points that we want to announce. Yay! The queen of points for attendee engagement on the community app is Bridget Savoy with currently 1,100,000 points.
Go Bridget.
Wow. Go Bridget.
The queen of points.
Queen of points. Oh my goodness. Bridget has had her fingers working on that app and claimed the top prize for conference engagement. Bridget will be sending you a gift card and a special surprise in the mail. Sarah will post a picture of your prize soon, and you'll see your gift card was donated by Darlene James, a TWC participant. Thanks, Darlene. And I'm going to turn it over to Sharon.
Whoop, whoop. All right. And now let's introduce Dr. Nathaniel Williams. Dr. Nate is a former foster child and is the father of 8 children. He is an author and the host of a weekly talk show in Philadelphia. Without going into his full bio, which is online in the app, let's welcome Dr. Nathaniel Williams.
Thank you so much.
Hey.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And I invite all of you, I see that we have about 270 of you, to feel free to open up your cameras and allow for us to see your beautiful, handsome faces as we get ready to tie out this conference. It just makes it a little bit more comfortable and personable when we can see each other. We're already strained under the circumstances without being able to be in the same room. So please, if you can, just allow us to at least to see you. It would make the big difference. So I see some of you have heeded that request, and I appreciate that. So I'm hoping that our time together, and I've been asked to make sure you understand that when I'm done, the conference is not over, that Sharon and Susan are going to need a few more minutes of your time before they let you go. So please do not rush out once I'm done, and I'll remind you again to hold tight for them to come back and circle back to you before the conference is officially over. And I think we owe Sharon and Susan and the rest of the team a round of applause for all their hard work to pull this off under very challenging circumstances. So let's say thank you to them for all of their hard work. So hopefully you can hear my clap on behalf of everybody else. So as the PowerPoint says, our title of our time together is called Moving Child Welfare Forward in a New Dimension. And the new dimension I'd like to suggest to us all is that we think about looking at things in whole and universal ways. And what I mean by that is things that will affect us all, that it's not only the children and the youth, but it's also us as adults. And what I'd like to share with you, this is my 55th year of life, but I was made an orphan when I was in my 5th year of life. So I've been 50 years an orphan, but I recognize I've been 55 years blessed. And so I'd like to do is to share some of that insight with you and some of those experiences with you and some of the things that I've learned along the way. One of the things that I try to do as I embark on each and every day in the life that I live, in addition to the work that I do, is I try to remember why I do what I do. And so here is something that I often listen to that helps me to helps me remember why I do what I do. And I wanted to share it with you, and then I'm going to ask you to please share your thoughts. And I'm sure a lot of us have heard it before. And one of the things that often happens when you share something is that's often the first thing out of someone's mouth is that they have heard it before. But one of the things that I would encourage you to allow yourself is to possibly hear it differently. And possibly experience something differently, maybe pay attention to an aspect of what you're hearing or seeing that you didn't pay attention to before. So even though it is something that you've experienced before, it's like Tuesdays. You've experienced lots of different Tuesdays, but this Tuesday or this Friday hopefully is going to be a little different than the next. So without further ado, I'll ask you to please listen.
Tears streaming down, her heart is broken, and because she is hurting, so am I. He wears a frown, his dreams are choking. And because he stands alone, his dreams will die. So I humbly come to you and pray. As I sound alarm the warfare of today, hear me, I pray. What about the children? To ignore is so easy. So many innocent children who choose the wrong way. What about the children? Remember when we were children? And if it's not for those who loved us and
So I wanted to stop at this point for just a chance for some of us to share our thoughts about what we just heard and what goes through our mind. I think that child welfare doesn't have an anthem, but to me, I think I would suggest that that be it, at least the placeholder until something better comes along. I think it reminds us that what our role is, that we're not often dealing with perfect circumstances and children, but often they're just looking for one person. But often they're surrounded by a team. They should have more than just one person, but they're just looking for one person to make that difference in their life. So again, let's stop for a moment. And for anyone else to share their thoughts, please let Sharon know by raising your hand or signaling to her that you have a comment to share, and she'll unmute your mic.
We have, I can't count them because they're going by so fast, comments in the chat box, but a beautiful song and voice, all owe a great debt. Tanya Leah says she has her church rock going on.
And I think Katie says, Katie hearing, if it was not for the children, we would not be here. It's a beautiful reminder. So someone else, Rhonda said, is deeply moving. I think we all need to just keep that in mind and maybe have that on speed dial or playback, especially when those days that it gets a little challenging. Is just, and it's not a question, it's a statement. And that's why I put in the PowerPoint that you'll receive, it's an exclamation point, that it's what about the children, and to remind ourselves that that's what it's all about. So we'll move along. Something else that I think should be added to the dimension of what we do is just reminding ourselves about the wholeness of ourselves, as well as the young people we support, that they're whole people. They're part of a whole community. There's a whole system as well. Hold on a second. See that the slide changed.
Yeah, I think it might be stuck. I think I might.
Okay, that's just
Okay.
I'll pull it back up. And this whole PowerPoint is now available on the website, so don't feel compelled to take notes. It'll be there if it's not there already right after the presentation. So all of it will be there as a PDF, so you can download it at your leisure. But again, part of what I think we need to do is just remember there's a whole person and a whole community and a whole system and a whole family. And back in about 1999, I developed this model that looked at these 8 domains, and one being health. And our goal, I think, in that area is to be fit and to maximize and to be healthy. And spirituality is about believing. Personal development is about becoming and thriving and overcoming and expanding ourselves. And our finances is about having and hopefully being able to give. Our environment is where we live, and hopefully we can win and we can own. Education is to know, is to seek and to acquire. Recreation is about having enjoyment and having fun and being able to relax and challenge ourselves. And family and friends is about belonging and loving. And these are not in any priority order, but it's just a reminder, hopefully to ourselves, to make sure that all these components are there, and that we think about that as we're planning and for ourselves as well as for others, that we always make sure that these components are considered, because often it's the things that we leave out. It's when we leave out, considering the environment or considering recreation or considering spirituality or not paying attention to health, that those are the things that come back to haunt us and to cause us some challenges. So if we can put this on the front end and make ourselves aware of it and then plan accordingly, it'll save ourselves some real challenges in the future. Yesterday, I challenged members of my team to help us come up with some courageous questions to ask ourselves in each of these areas. And I sincerely appreciate them, and a lot of them have joined us from Pennsylvania on today's call. So I thank them for rapidly helping us develop this. And so in the area of personal development, the question that you may want to ask yourself, are you on a journey or seeking a destination? And really the answer should be you should be on a journey because you're supposed to keep moving and not be stuck at a particular spot. Spirituality, are you in touch with and believe in something bigger than you? In the area of health, are you fighting the best fight for your life and well-being? Education, do you know what you don't know? Environment, are your surroundings safe for you and others? Recreation, are you living in the moment and having fun right now? Financial, do you have enough to leave behind? And if so, how long will it last? And family and friends, are you able to trust them and they trust you? So these are just some questions that as you look at these areas that you may want to ask yourself to call the question. And that's a parliamentary procedure that generally when you've had enough people talking, you raise your hand and you say, I want to call the question. Then you need to get someone to second that, and there's a little debate, and then you can stop the conversation and move on. And I think sometimes in these areas, we just got to call the question and really ask ourselves, are we really trying to develop ourselves personally? Are we trying to reach our highest height when it comes to spirituality? Are we taking care of our health? Are we trying to educate ourselves? And when I say education, I mean formally and informally. Is our environment safe and not toxic? Are we trying to recreate? And again, it's not just the paid trips and the things that cost money. It's just making sure that people are enjoying what they're doing along the way. And finances, again, that we're thinking about what we're spending right now, but also the legacy that we potentially are leaving behind, and family and friends. I remember talking with a mom who had a youngster who was struggling with a drug addiction, loved them dearly, but could not trust them. And so when she left the house, so did he have to do so as well. And so reality is love is not enough, that really often we have to take it to a higher level, and the higher level is being able to trust. So again, just trying to remind ourselves we're whole people, and we need to make sure that all of our domains are being supported and paid attention to. And again, I would suggest that there isn't one that's more important than the other. And really, if we're doing it correctly, one is supportive of the other. And that I think that if we're doing it correctly, one is going to ask that all seven be satisfied as well. And we're not going to just focus on one or two or three of them. We're going to really ask that all of them are brought together. Another thing that I'd like to suggest to you as part of what we add to our dimension of how we live is the important premise of settling our spirit and arresting our challenging thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And one of the things that I learned along the way is about the word and a comma. And those are two things that are very misunderstood because they are very powerful words and a symbol. That it's really trying to let us know it's not one and the same. That to be a father is different than being a husband. To be a mother is different than being a wife. So sometimes the way it's said, it sounds like it's a run-on sentence, but it's not. So when you see the word and, you need to be very clear that there is a big distinction between what is being said. So I learned that as a manager, that I used to have people and their titles used to be Director of Operations and Human Resources. And if you have a title like that, you need to know there's probably no way you're going to be able to do both of those jobs. So I learned that the hard way, and then I changed everybody's titles and made them assistant vice presidents and had nice glorified titles and took out the word "and," so they didn't know what really was happening to them. because often, to be in charge of human resources and trying to make sure that the workforce is supported versus operations is something totally different. And often we will clump them together like there's some sort of synergy between the two, but often they're distinctly different. So I would just encourage you that when it says arrest your challenging thoughts, that's one thing. Your feelings are something different, and your behaviors are something different. So trying to bring all of those together is a full-time job with mandatory overtime. And what I think is important is to just concentrate on trying to breathe in the best of what's around you and to release the stress that's there. And often what we're ending up doing is we're breathing in the stress and releasing the best, and we have it backwards. And I, thank Sharon dearly. She's a classmate with me at the University of Southern California's doctorate in social work program. And so I thank her so much for inviting me to be part of the conference. And I walked away with something very special. And it's on this slide. Yesterday, I was in a workshop, and it was given by Gary Mallon. And he is a professor and a director at Hunter College in New York City. And I heard of him, but I really didn't know much about him. So while the workshop was going on, I Googled his name. And I found some article in Youth Today about him. And in the article, it said that he had started his career at St. Dominic's Home. And I was like, wow, I was a kid at St. Dominic's Home. And one of the things that happened when I was at St. Dominic's Home is I was an altar boy. And as an altar boy, when the nuns died, I would go from, as you can see there, I would go from St. Dominic's Home to the convent to the cemetery. Now, this is a map from Dominican College's website. They don't have the cemetery on the map. I drew that in there. And they don't have St. Dominic's Home on there. I drew that in there. But so if you can see the red line here, that was my trip, was from the home to the convent to the cemetery. But see these little red dots here? Those are all the buildings that belong to Dominican College. While I was there for 2 years, never once did anyone ever talk to me about Dominican College. And for many years, I would tell people stories about, oh, I was in St. Dominic's Home and they had a college right next door. And I was good friends with the nuns and I was an altar boy. And they never said anything to me about Dominican College. And I realized yesterday, sitting in that workshop, because Dominican College wasn't for me. It was for Gary Mallon. Because that was his launch pad to do the outstanding work that he's doing. And there was another place for me to be, and it wasn't Dominican College. And that also, often our spirit is so unsettled because we think that we've been wronged and this is the way it should be. But just allowing yourself to be open to the possibility that you could be wrong, even at 55, for something that happened 40 years ago. So I made an effort to reach out to Dr. Mallon to let him know. And Dr. Mallon doesn't play, because in his article in Youth Today, he named names. And so when he said Sister Caroline in the article, Sister Caroline was a tough cookie. And he talked about her, that she didn't want no noise coming from his unit. And I remember that distinctly. She drove a green Pinto. And she was a tough nun. But again, our paths crossed. And I thought my path should be a certain way. But again, I needed to settle my spirit and just to recognize that wasn't the place for me. And that path that I went from the home to the convent to the cemetery was as far as I was supposed to go on that particular property. But again, I could not have done that. And I could not have embraced that. And I couldn't have come to this conference being open to that if my spirit wasn't settled to understand that I'm coming here to present, but I'm also coming here to learn and hopefully walk away with something that I didn't have before. So I wanted to share that with you, and I thank you again for the opportunity to be with you. Another thing I'd like for you to take back is trying to flip the script on how things are now. We live in a world where there's a pyramid and the creators are all at the top and there's innovators and maintainers. That I hope the future with the work that we're doing, we can really flip that we are really trying to build so many more creators, so many more innovators, and not so many maintainers. And especially with the children and families that we're working with, that group is filled with more creators and innovators and less maintainers. And I'm hoping that this is an example of something when you're trying to have a courageous conversation with a youngster or trying to have a conversation with a colleague about what you're trying to do in your program and your agency and with your team, that hopefully this depiction will be helpful to you to say, this is what we're trying to do. We're not interested in creating a lot of maintainers. We are interested in creating a lot of creators. So I'm hoping that this is a tool that may be helpful to you as you have conversations, as well as with a young person, to say that we're trying to get you not to be in a group where you're following people and trying to maintain the status quo. We want you to be part of that creator and that innovator group because that's the people that make things happen. And we want you to be part of that particular group more so than the maintainers. Another thing I want to share with you, and hopefully it'll be useful to you as you go forth, is just recognizing, sadly, that there is a lot of torment in our environment and a lot of pain in the rooms that we go into. And for us to walk and behave with that understanding, that there are winners and losers, challenged and unchallenged, stressed and unstressed people wherever we go. And just to recognize that and behave accordingly. And often our happiness is at the expense of someone else, and just to be mindful of that. And that having that clarity and helping to bring clarity to a circumstance can help relieve some of that torment and some of that pain. And that at the end of the day, I believe that's what our job is in human services, is to recognize that torment and that pain and to do something about it, that we see something and we do something, and recognize that that's not going to be easy. And it's often not going to be something that is always appreciated in the moment, but in the long term, it will be. And one story that just recently happened, I got an email from a PhD retired person from the University of Pittsburgh who was working with prisoners to look at post-traumatic stress disorder and solitary confinement, saying that I had worked with a young man and presented expert testimony, and he spoke a lot about you. And I feel an obligation to connect you two. And also, by the way, he wrote a book that was published 2 years ago, and you're in it. You might want to read it. And I'm like, wow, all right. So we go out on Amazon and get the book, and you bet we're in there for 4 pages. And what he talks about in the book is that his arrival, and I flew out from Allentown, which is about 2 hours north of Philadelphia, to Pittsburgh, which is about 5 or 6 hours west, to interview him. And because he was appropriate, we flew back. But because it was last minute, we flew back first class. Now, he thought, that's the way we live out here, but those were the only tickets available at the last minute, because he had really challenged the program tremendously. And being that I said I would accept him, they're like, can you take him tonight? And so when we called, those were the only tickets left on the airline. but he wrote in the book about how impressed he was that we flew back first class. And he had a hairstyle that had his hair where it was 2 feet high on his head. And you could see that it was rather matted down as well. So when we landed in Allentown, I said, you're going to have to cut that hair so that we can get to what's at the bottom and work backwards to try to, to treat that. But it's gonna have to come off because what's in there doesn't look good. So when this poor kid had his hair cut, his very dark face, as dark as mine, turned completely white from what was underneath there. But he went off to the group home and settled himself in, and had some challenges. But eventually, after about 4 months, he decided that he wanted to invite some girls into the program, and he did that. And the staff caught him, and he was having some problems before that. And I said, if you don't make some adjustments, you're going to have to go back to the YDC, which is our juvenile justice facility, if you don't make some changes. And so he knew that, when I said something like that, that was real. So he decided to run. But when he ran, he took the van and some of his housemates with it. He was all of 14. And he ran and he left. And so I had never had contact with him since then. Well, he's now 38. And one of the things that he writes in the book is this was the best placement he ever was at. And he says, if a kid's going to go into placement, this is where every kid should go. But he didn't belong there because he saw himself as a felon. He saw himself as someone that didn't belong there. And so I just thought that was a really insightful information for him to share. And as I was telling you, that Sharon and I are at USC, and my focus there, starting in January of 2019, has been on AWOLing. And then bingo, 2 weeks ago, a kid who AWOLed and stole a van wrote a book 2 years ago about the time I was starting the program, talking about his AWOLing. But then he wrote a subsequent email to one of my colleagues, and he talked about, we used to have a monthly Skills for Life meeting, and he talked about how he remembers the conversation we had. And the conversation that we had with the group was, I showed them a map of Pennsylvania, and then I showed them a map of the world. And I showed them how small Pennsylvania was in comparison to the world. And he said that logic has held him for 23 years. And I can't underline it as much as I'd like. He was in the agency for only 4 months. But he writes like he was here for a very long time. And so I share that with you, just trying to underscore and underline, we have no idea the impact that we have on these youngsters and what they take with them. And we sometimes don't feel they're getting it. And he has made it very clear. I'm coming out. I graduate, Sharon graduates the first week in December, and he gets out the first week in December. And he's made it real clear. I want to, make a reconnection with you because that information got me through, and I want to get this information to other people. So again, I would just encourage you to keep that in mind, and that whatever clarity that we can give kids, sometimes they'll be 38 before it makes sense, but they'll carry it with them. And as they deal with the torment in the environment and the pain in the room, they're going to remember that. And it's not our job to be judge, jury, and executioner. Our job is just to make sure that they have the information, that the book is in the library. And when they choose to go to the shelf and to pull it out, because the book is there, they can check it out. So I'll make sure that I get to Sharon and Susan the book title. And it's an interesting book. I was talking to someone and I said, let me tell you what page it's on. And then I realized it's the first book I've seen that doesn't have page numbers. So I just basically have to tell you how far to go in the book in chapters to try to give you some guidance there. But it is an interesting read about his story thus far, but he makes it real clear. He has more chapters to write, and hopefully we can help him to do so. Again, something else I'd like to share with you is the spectrum of engagement for ourselves as well as for the people, the young people we support. Just recognizing that spectrum spans from disengagement to limited engagement to full engagement, and looking at sometimes under disengagement that people are reluctant, but sometimes they appear to be bold and brazen. And you would think that they're engaged, but sometimes that's their way of showing that they're adamant they're not going to be engaged. And that sometimes that limited engagement is they're passive and reserved and cautious. And again, what we're looking for is where they're fully engaged, enthused, and motivated and inspired. And again, I'm hoping that a sheet like this is something that you can pull out as you're having a conversation with someone and to ask them, where are you? In this job that you're in, as a young person, with this program that we're running, where are you in this spectrum? Right now, where are you? So that you have somewhat of a benchmark. And sometimes we need that third party to help us broker that conversation. And so hopefully a tool like this is something that would help you to have that conversation with an adult or a child to try to gauge where they are in that spectrum of engagement, and really try to encourage them to see where you're trying to bring them, which is for them to be fully engaged and involved in what you're doing. Another thing I'd like to share with you is the trajectory of success, especially when it comes to youngsters, trying to get them to do that walk from silence, to be able to speak, to be interested in reading, and like Andre, to be interested in writing. But also as a professor, as an adjunct, I realize I can often lose my students by just giving them one of those three assignments. Often I will lose a third of my students by asking them to speak. I'll lose the other third by asking them to read. And if I want to lose the last third, I'll ask them to write. But often the part that's missing is that that's what successful people are able to do. They're able to break that silence, learn how to speak, to read, and then to write. And so whatever we can do to encourage people to share their voice and to share their experience is important. And so that also that it's something that is able to be shared with others for in the future. And again, with the technology that is available, once it's there, it'll be there for quite a long time. And that's why the writing and the chronicling and the putting it in black and white is something that is so very important, so that people can learn from it for a long time in the future. So again, I hope that's a helpful thing to you as well. Also keeping in mind the ships that we're working on. We're trying to work on personship, where people are trying to be their best me. Fellowship, where they're trying to work on being our best us. Citizenship, they're trying to work on being the best community. And as leadership, trying to help find out what's the best pathway. And those are the ships that we're working on. There's a lot of work under each one of these individually, but just to make it clear, we're working on all of these. What's important is that we don't leave any of them behind. We don't want to leave you behind as a person. We want to make sure that you're able to network with other people and have a sense of fellowship, and also your responsibility as a citizen, but also that you're a leader, because at any given time, someone else is following you. So it's not always just that permanent leader. We have a lot of transient leaders as well, and we need to develop their skills just as well as the skills of others. One of the things I'd like to share with you is about 5 closest friends. And there's some research that has been done that will show that you're generally not going to do better financially and otherwise, than your 5 closest friends. That they will serve as an anchor for you. So be careful who they are. But I also wanted to extrapolate that to talk about behaviors, because I think that there should be qualities that we're looking for in those 5 closest friends as human beings. And I think that those qualities often are secondary. And I think that those would be primary things we're looking for. And so I think having a sense of humor, and it doesn't mean that you're looking for a person who's always trying to be funny, but that they have a lightness with how they handle things, that it's not always a fatal way of which they look at a circumstance, that they have a sense of humility and a lack of arrogance, that they're optimistic and they have a positive outlook, that they're mindful and they have a heightened awareness, and they're about empowerment, and they understand the perceived mandate that surrounds their life and the life of others. And that I think if we are able to bring those 5 closest friends along in us, but also trying to instill those in the youngsters we support, and then asking that they seek those out in other people, I think we would have a whole different kind of existence as well. And so often when you are trying to look at a circumstance of what went right, what went wrong, I'm hoping that these 5 closest friends would give you a report card. You know, was there a lightness with how we handled that circumstance? Was there a sense of humility? Was there optimism? Was there mindfulness? Was there empowerment, as a way to try to share what potentially went right, as well as what was somewhat challenging. Going back to the issue of AWOLing, that has been something that, as I said, was very challenging, unbeknownst to Andre sharing his story and highlighting that it was a problem 23 years ago. It's still a problem today. And so we developed a logic model, which said that if we engage them early, that we think we could stop the amount of kids that are running away. And we did that. And so we trained our staff over the month of June and July on completing what we call a 4Ms plan, which focuses on developing a plan for each kid that has a mapping and a component that talks about where do they want to go, a mental health and wellness that talks about a focus on stability and their wellness, a mediation that talks about if they have a problem, if they have a struggle, where do they go for an intervention, and for mentorship, where do they go for someone to guide them. And that we developed a plan for the 102 children that are in our program in the month of August. And so by August 7th, each one of our children had a 4Ms plan. And then we monitored that for 75 days. And we saw in that 75 days a 46% reduction in AWOLs. And that looking at that trending, if that continues in that vein, it'll be over a year's time, the reduction will be about 75%. And so on some days, those 102 kids, there were 10, 12 kids on runaway. Now there are lots of days where there's 0, and there's 1 or 2. And we are still concerned about those 1 or 2. And I told my wife that we need to figure out a way to address those issues of the 1 or 2. And if I could go back for one more doctorate, I think I could solve that problem. And she told me, if you do that, you won't have someone to come back home to. So I'm going to turn that over to somebody else in this room to take that issue on, because I don't think that's a good alternative. But what we're seeing in all seriousness is that those 1 or 2 are on a mission, and they have a different agenda, and they don't want to hear what is being offered, and we have to look at a different way to engage them. The ones we were able to stop were just ones that just didn't have a plan. When we were able to share with them and help them to develop a plan, and this is done within hours of their arrival. So our state mandates by regulation that we have a ISP for them in 30 days, and that we learned is waiting too long. We don't have 30 days. We recognize that we have about 30 minutes. And so getting them early and getting them focused and getting them to understanding we want you to get in and get out as soon as we possibly can has made a dramatic difference. And these are posted in their rooms so they can see it and they can remind it, and they share with other people, their exterior team and their child advocate and others. It really has made a dramatic difference in the culture of the program. So we're really excited about that. So I wanted to share that with you as a possible tool that may make a difference in your programming as well. Something else I'd like to ask you to keep in mind that by the nature of the people we are and the work that we do, we often say and do things that allow for the moment to be cheapened. I was talking to someone and the person said to me, you know, if I can save one kid, and I'm like, that's a problem because you have a caseload of 30. What are we going to do with the other 29? Please stop saying that. You're cheapening the moment. You have the power. We need to find the resources, but you have the power. And I've heard teachers say the same thing. If I can teach one kid math, well, the problem is there are 96 kids in your classes. So what happens to the other 95? So we need to allow ourselves to speak from a point of strength and empowerment and a belief that if it lies ahead of us, it's something we can do. And then also remember, don't let the moment cheapen you. It's just a moment. It is going to pass. It's going to move on. And just to remind ourselves, we shouldn't cheapen the moment, and we shouldn't allow for the moment to cheapen us as well. One other thing we often, you've heard me say today is about settling your spirit, but looking at this list of emotions, that's in the middle there. And that there are two other feelings beyond that, which is being confident and capable. And again, just as you're having a conversation with yourself, with somebody else, with the youngster, it's just asking, where are you at? And I think often so much of what we're dealing with is because people are just downright scared. They're intimidated. And they don't realize it because often they didn't know what to call it. But often when you put something in front of them and you share it with them and you recognize that this is a possibility and they're safe, they begin to be honest with themselves and with others. And again, recognizing that once they're settled, then we can begin to have a conversation about being confident and feeling a sense of capability moving forth. So again, just something to keep in mind as we are helping people to make that journey from being scared to being capable. Something else I'd like you to keep in mind is some of the things that we've been told that often we repeat without questioning. And one of those things is that practice makes perfect. I want to suggest to you that that's a lie. What practice does is it makes more practice. It doesn't make you perfect. And we have to just be willing to understand that, that we're going to just keep working at this. It's going to just make more practice. We're never going to be perfect at this. It's just going to make more practice. And that our job is to stay intentionally intent on what we're doing. And we just can't go by default, and we just can't wing this. It's too important. And so many lives depend upon us that we have to get this right. And as I said earlier, that we need to embrace the and and not get ourselves into that fatalistic thinking about the or, that often it's being able to manage bringing all of those things together. It's not that I'm a father or a husband. It's just recognizing, or you're a mother or a daughter. It's being able to recognize I have to figure out a way to bring those ands together, that you are an athlete and a student. That, again, bringing all those things together. It's not that you have the luxury of just being one versus the other. And as we all know, we've gone through a lot in 2020. And I've heard some people say that I can't wait for 2020 to be over. Well, a little secret, it'll never be over. It'll always be part of who we are. It'll always be a year that we're going to remember for a long time to come. The remnants will live for a long time. But I think it's also helped us to remember that we have a capacity. The last couple of months have proven we can tolerate more disruption than we thought, because we have more capacity than we thought as individuals and families, communities, the nation, and the world. We're working some old things out of our lives and making new room for others. We're making changes at a warp speed that have never happened like this before. Give yourself and others a standing ovation and a big hug. Our best is truly yet to come. So again, going back to looking at those 8 domains, how you know you're in a pandemic is when all 8 domains are affected. Your spirituality is affected, your finances, your health, your family and friends. It's all affected. And that's how you know that you're dealing with something that's truly profound, is when everything has changed. But again, we're still standing. And for those that are no longer standing, we have to stand on their behalf. And make sure that what they stood for is not lost, because we're responsible now for carrying forth, and just recognizing because they're not here and because of what's gone on, there's again that torment in the environment and that pain in the room, and we have to help manage that. And being oblivious to that and pretending that it's not there is not going to help the circumstance. One last thing that I want to share with you before we open up for any questions and comments and thoughts that you may have is just to recognize as professionals, there are some things that we often don't hear. And one is that I'm sorry, and the other one is thank you. So let me, on behalf of people that may have forgot to say that to you, to say that I'm sorry. And there, for some of us, it's not as a professional. There are some of us that is just as people. There are some people that owe you an apology. That maybe that they left this world a little too soon without, tying things up for you the way they should have, and maybe you for them. Maybe there's some things that you wanted to say, you would have wanted them to say. Just some things that didn't happen the way we would all wanted them to be. And just to allow yourself to accept and receive an apology for that, and to embrace that. And then secondly is to embrace a thank you, because a lot of the work that you're doing, a lot of times it goes unrecognized. And I mean the personal work as well. Sometimes you bring the garbage in from your neighbor, and it's 11:30 at night, and that's the one night no one's peeking out the window. And lots of other things that you do personally and professionally. Is just to say thank you for what you're doing for others, and just to know that it is valued. And that you are appreciated. So please accept that apology and that thank you for all that you do. So without further ado, we'll open up for any questions and comments or thoughts that you may have that you want to share. Maybe if you could raise your hand, Sharon can see you. The problem is there's 336 of you, so it's hard to scan you all. But if you make a little bit of movement or send her a chat, maybe she can open you up. But the other choice is I can see some of you, So, and I could see your names. So you may get the lucky call out here. So let us know.
Maybe you guys should raise your hand before he calls on you. Oh, we have a, wait, Mr. Marvin wants to
There
be.
you go. Mr. Vaught, how are you, sir?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
Very good. Thank
I've
you.
enjoyed your presentation. How can I obtain your slide?
Sure. If you go to the, Sharon, maybe you could post that in the chat because that's on the website. That's a little different than the WHOA link, but there's a website for the conference that there's a page that has all of the handouts for all of the sessions. I thought I was important, so I wanted mine embargoed until the last minute. So we just posted it. So it's
All right.
it's there now. Actually, I was cleaning it up to making last minute changes. So it is there now. And my contact information is the last slide in there as well. So if any of you want to reach out, but it's also in the presenters, there are links there as well. So there's tons of ways for you to be in contact if you want to. Sharon and Susan and the team have done a wonderful, wonderful job with making sure you have all that you need there. So, but Marvin, any thoughts or comments that you want to share about anything that was covered? Made sense or didn't make sense?
Well, all of it was kind of inspiring for me. I took some pictures of some of the things you had on the screen so I didn't have time to write everything down. But I particularly like that piece about seizing the moment and not letting the moment minimize you, because we have to live in the narrow space that we have, because it won't be very long before we got to change into a different space. And I really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you so much, sir. Sure. Anyone else that would like to share any thoughts before I turn it back over to our host? And we are seeing your comments in the chat. We thank you.
When I stopped looking back then, when I let go and I let God have his way. Yeah, you have to let go and let God, let go and let God. You have to let go and let God. When you stop worrying, that's when things start happening. When you let go and you let God have his way. Thank you.
Robert, thank you so much. That is such a blessing. Thank you, sir. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Sharon and Susan,
thank you so much to both of you, Dr. Williams, Jarvis. I'm thrilled to have worked with both of you on this project, and all of you that are here with us for presenting this keynote, the workshop you presented earlier. Thank you. Your lived experiences help us focus on making the future better. It really makes a difference. Thank you. And we would also like to offer congratulations from Together We Can, all of us here on this multiple screens showing up, to Dr. Williams and two other presenters from our conference, Shobana Powell and Sharon Del Visco. You heard reference to this. The three of them will be graduating in December with their doctorate. So congratulations from all of us to the three of you. Okay, at our last general session, we shared some networking numbers from last night. And today, as I was preparing these closing comments, I was amazed. Our participants have shared over 7,874 messages in 3 days. 3 days. We had 289 photos, 208 posts. We hope that you made some amazing, great connections through that online networking, and you can continue to use the app download the files, look up some context. Who was that person you were talking to along the way? Things like that. Go find them. The handouts and evaluations are hosted on our website. It's www.latwc.org. It's easy to remember. LA for Louisiana, TWC for Together We Can.org. latwc.org. You can go there and obtain any handouts that were shared with us for the different sessions. They'll be available online for 30 days. Okay. For purpose of your credits, and Sharon's already posted the link, but I know we've scrolled past it really fast. We've had a lot of comments rolling. But for purposes of your credits, go to that same website and you can go to the evaluation tab and you can see the evaluation links for all 3 days. So if you missed one, go back and get it. Make sure you have done an evaluation for each day. It's critically important. The steering committee has set our goals for being in Lafayette next year. We hope we can be there. We want to see all of you in person. We want to hug on you. You know that's what we do. So we have our dates selected. It's November 3rd through 5th. So if you want to mark your calendar now for next year, it is November 3rd through 5th. The first week, again, will be the Wednesday through Friday. We'll keep you posted on what next year looks like as we go along. We're going to prepare for our topics and such like we normally would. How we present, we'll find out along the way. We've come to the end of the conference. We're sad to see you go, but we know we've probably worn you out also. 3 days of sitting and collecting all this information, sitting and monitoring the screen. We normally give out lots of prizes at this point because that's what we do at the end of the conference, but instead we had a little door prize wizard in the office and she's been handing them out and awarding them throughout the event. We gave out 44 door prizes throughout the conference. Those are on their way through the mail already. So my last little bit is thank you again for joining us online, for working through the challenges, having patience as we tried to help those of you who had some tech issues. We'll see you next year. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Jarvis. Thanks, Nate. Thanks, everybody, for attending.
Bye.
Have a safe weekend.